Negotiation. For far too long, the word has been twisted, hijacked by hardball tactics, manipulation, and a distorted view of winning. But not here. Welcome to Shear Line, the podcast that's bound and determined to reclaim and restore the good name of negotiation and unlock the door to value creation, win-win solutions, and the true power of collaboration and integrative negotiation. And yes, we're also shining a very bright light on those bullies, bluffers, and gaslighters who mistake coercion for competence and make you cringe when you hear the word negotiation. So why Shear Line? Well, inside a lock, the shear line is the space or line created when the right key is inserted and all the pins align, allowing the lock to turn and open. That's what we're after: precision, understanding, and unlocking better conversations. So whether you're in sales, leadership, real estate, or just trying to get your toddler to wear shoes, this is the podcast for you. Let's find the line where progress happens. Let's open some doors.
Calling all real estate investors. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at Cross Country Mortgage, and it's time to level up your portfolio. Whether you're a seasoned pro or making your first investment, I'll find the right financing to maximize your returns. From single-family homes to multi-unit properties, I'm here to help you crush your investment goals. Ready to grow? Let's connect today and make it happen.
Welcome to our listeners and viewers far and wide, from Great Neck to the shores of Governor's Island. I am your host, Eirik Gislason, and I am an associate broker with Brown Harris Stevens. I'm a master certified negotiation expert and instructor. I'm the founder of Archway Partners Coaching, and I will be the one leading you through the art and science of getting more and structuring better outcomes. And I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome you all to the first of many Shear Line episodes on the More Network. And I want to give a particular shout out and thank you to Matt Leone and the marketing team at BHS for giving me this platform, and for our fearless leader, Bess Friedman, for elevating us as agents and giving us the platform and the opportunity to elevate ourselves and our careers. So thank you for that. And also to Ray and Lena for all you do behind the scenes. Thank you so much. Yes, let's give it up for them to keep all of our more than 20 More Network podcasts going. So look, I will introduce this fine gentleman in just a couple of minutes. But before I do that, I want to take a point of personal privilege and just tell you why we're here. Why I've chosen to launch this podcast on negotiation. And as I said in that introduction, my goal is to take the good name of negotiation back from the gaslighters and the bullies and the blusterers of this industry and negotiation in general. So we're going to make it fun, we're going to make it light, and I really want to make negotiation approachable for every one of my audience members, whether you are trying to negotiate a real estate deal or just trying to get your kid to tie their shoes. So welcome here. And I do want to introduce our first Shear Line topic, which is going to be a lot of fun. And my guest next to me, Mr. Jay Billiot of JJ Billiot Interior Designs, is definitely an expert when it comes to this topic. But I want to know if you've all heard of the term Minnesota nice. And if you're from Minnesota, you'll know that this has a particular meaning, and it's part of our everyday existence if you're from Minnesota. It's smiling at that stranger in the grocery store who just rudely cut in front of you in line, while internally resenting them with every fiber of your being. Or it's saying, "Oh no, take your time," to that person who's parked in front of your driveway, when what you really mean to say is, "I hate you, but I'll die before I ever tell you out loud." That's Minnesota nice. In fact, it's such a part of Minnesota lore that books have been written on the subject. Minnesota Nice, A Transplant's Guide to Surviving and Thriving in Minnesota, and the classic 1987 book, How to Speak Minnesota. Remember that one, Jay?
I do.
So what does it mean to be Minnesota nice? Is it a survival instinct, a Nordic myth served with a helping of tater tot hot dish? No, it's a cultural communication style, and it's rooted in politeness, in indirectness, aversion to confrontation, and a near spiritual belief to being agreeable, even when you're not. It's about harmony over honesty, smooth over sharp, warm over real. And speaking of smooth, warm, and real, I'm thrilled to have Jay Billiot with me, of JJ Billiot Interior Design. And Jay, like I said, happens to be an expert on the concept of Minnesota Nice, as well as an incredibly talented interior designer in New York City. He hails from Madison, Minnesota, on the Dakota coast of Minnesota.
Dakota coast.
Yeah. And it's also the lutefisk capital of the United States. Did you know that, Jay?
I did, actually.
If you don't know what lutefisk is, Google it. Oofta, as we say in Minnesota. It's gross. It's bad. But I definitely recommend that you Google it. And you recently did return from a trip to the motherland, right?
I did. I just spent 5 days in Minnesota.
Visiting friends and family. So did you bring back any of that Minnesota accent with you?
Not intentionally, but it has happened that I do slip into it pretty easily after having visited, for sure.
Well, I'm sure, Jay, you'll agree, Minnesota Nice sounds something like this in real life. It's, oh, Eric, did you do something with your hair? Or, Jay, I might say to you after this podcast ends and you say, how did it go? I might say, oh, Jay, you did fine, right? And although there are positive attributes to Minnesota Nice, politeness, friendliness, emotional restraint, oh God, does it come with some baggage. Conflict avoidance, passive aggressiveness, resistance to change, and a gross understatement of one's wants and needs. So here's what's happening inside of us whether you're from Minnesota or not, when we feel disrespected, mistreated, dismissed, or just a moment of conflict. Our body naturally reacts. Our brain processes that information in an instant. It says, ooh, I didn't like that very much. And it interprets it as a threat. So we get tense, we get warm, maybe a little rage bubbles up inside of us, and your brain is determining a response. So what do? What do you say? Well, Minnesota Nice suppresses that rage, buries that tension, and masks any frustration with a grin and a kind phrase like, oh, no problem, it's fine, all right? So that's why this is relevant to our topic and our conversation on negotiation mastery. So how does Minnesota Nice, or more specifically conflict avoidance, negatively affect us in a negotiation? Well, I'll give you a few quick examples. First, the soft ask. A conflict avoider unrepresents their needs and wants because they don't want to seem difficult or a bother. By doing this, they leave value on the table because it's not because the other side out-negotiated them. It's because they didn't advocate for their interests in the first place. The second is the polite, agreeable nodding syndrome, right? They nod, they smile, they say things like, oh, that sounds fair, and I think we're getting close to a deal, right? But they're really actually uncomfortable, confused, or disagreeing silently. They're too afraid of creating tension, so they hide behind niceties. And you think you've reached an agreement, but what you've really reached is passive standoff. And then third, delayed and deflect tactics. Instead of engaging in difficult parts of the deal or the most important value elements for both sides, like price, timing, contingencies, or personal property, they kick the can down the road. They say, oh, well, we'll deal with that later. Avoiding the hard stuff can make a bigger, messier problem down the line, and mutual frustration bubbles underneath. So with that, Jay, as I mentioned, you're a serious expert on the subject, which is only one of the reasons I wanted to have you.
As are you.
As am I. Only one of the reasons why I wanted to have you as the first guest on the Shear Line podcast. But you've been in residential interior design for nearly 20 years.
Yes. Based
in New York City, but working in the tri-state area.
Yes.
You've been a New Yorker for over almost 30 years.
Almost 30.
And not only are you a guest speaker, a panelist, but your work was recently featured on the cover of Lux magazine, the November-December
issue, yes.
So take a look at that.
Yeah,
it's a gorgeous cover, I must say. And most importantly, I think, you are partially responsible for my marriage and therefore my children. Although that might be overstating it a little bit.
Yes.
I should mention at this point, at the end of the podcast, I have a very special announcement about Jay. I'm not giving him one of my children, but we have a special announcement at the end of the show, so stick around for that. And so, Jay, I wanted our audience to get to know you a little bit better beyond your impressive bio. So since it's our first episode of the Shear Line, I also selfishly want them to know a little bit more about me, and I figure we could probably cover both of those bases in one conversation. So let's turn back the clock 25 years and talk about how we know each other.
Yeah.
We met doing theater.
Yeah.
We were both in the theater. I moved to New York to do theater. I believe you did the same.
Yeah.
And we met doing a show in Virginia. And the funniest thing was we had lived in the same city. We met in Virginia, and upon meeting, we found out that we grew up 2 hours apart from each other, less than 2 hours apart from each other in rural Minnesota.
Yeah.
So we grew up. We're the same age. Our birthdays are within
3 weeks.
3 weeks. You're older.
I'm older.
You're older.
Thank you for pointing that out.
We met doing a show in Virginia, and when we were speaking there, we discovered we both lived in the same neighborhood in Queens.
We could see each other's
We could
apartments
see each
from
other's
our
apartments,
windows.
less than a block away from
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
So we had a lot in common. And not to mention, we both grew up in rural Minnesota, which is it's a very specific upbringing.
Yeah.
You know, we did not grow up in a big city.
Yeah.
So
How
we have
big
a
is
lot
Madison?
of similar traits. When I was there, I believe it was about 1,100 people. Now it's probably 900. And prior to that, the first 15 years of my life, I lived in a town, Marietta, Minnesota, which at the time had population 275 people. And now it's probably even considerably less.
Wow. Well, that makes
Very
New
small.
Ulm, where I grew up, look like a metropolis. Yeah. Like 15,000. We were huge.
Was it really that big?
Yeah, we had more than one stoplight. How many did you have?
Oh, we didn't have any. There was one 5 miles away at the where you had to cross Highway 212.
Oh, yeah, of course, Highway 212.
very dangerous.
I realized at one point I was living in Minnesota, and I learned that in order to be a town, you had to either have a post office or a grain elevator or something like that.
I think every town was built around a grain elevator.
Yeah,
That's all there was.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I teach a lot of negotiation. And one of the things that I teach when I do the imagery of what a conversation should look like, I always think of southern Minnesota. It's flat. It's very, very flat in southern Minnesota. And what you see when you look across the landscape of southern Minnesota, or look across the horizon, is you see these little groves of trees that are hiding a little farmhouse, and then a silo perched next to them. And so that's what you see. And then there are cornfields and alfalfa and soybeans. That's really all it is, and cows. And so when I teach having a conversation, I always have that imagery of winding down the county roads in Minnesota, these winding county roads. And then every once in a while, you'll encounter that grove of trees and that silo, and the silo is where all the grain is. Yeah. So you just kind of have a winding conversation, and then when you see the silo, that's when you dip in and have your little script, so to speak.
Sure.
Yeah. I've always loved that imagery of Minnesota.
That's all of the imagery in Minnesota.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All of it.
Yeah, unless you get up in the Iron Range, you get north, and then it becomes a little more interesting, maybe. I'm not sure.
I never. I mean, when you grow up in rural Minnesota, you only travel as far as your high school sports district will take you.
That's a good
There's
point.
no reason to go any further other
That's a
than
good
for
point.
family vacations. But when you're growing up, that's the extent of your travel.
Yeah, that's
which
a
is
good point.
basically your county.
Yeah, that's what you know, your county.
You know your
exactly.
county.
Well, when we fast forward, so we lived about a block away from each
block
other. So, of
away.
course, we became fast friends.
Yes.
And then shortly, a year later, maybe after we met in 2001, doing, can I say it? We were doing Oliver, which was like 2 months after 9/11. It was an odd choice, but, do you remember that?
I do now, yeah.
So
I
then
do
the
now.
following summer, we went back to the same theater,
Yeah.
and we did a production of Annie, Get Your Gun.
That's right.
Which is where I met my wife, courtesy of Jay.
Yes, I knew her. I was friends with her before you were friends with her.
Yes, that's right. But
Yeah.
you knew me, and you basically vouched for me in a way. I hope. Is that what happened?
I did, yeah, I did. I did. I was integral in the process.
And now moving
was
down the line,
encouraging.
my kids call you Uncle Jay.
They
You
do.
live not too far from us now.
Not even
I
2
was
blocks
your
away.
agent.
Yeah,
You
and
were
I was
my
your designer. Yeah.
And it's interesting, going back to the conversation on negotiation, and maybe we'll touch on this in some of the questions. There were a couple of moments or instances. It was not an easy design process for our apartment. It happened during COVID.
Yeah. Correct.
You took that whole thing, you kept it together, wrapped it in duct tape, but you did a few things from a negotiation standpoint or from a relationship standpoint that really were amazing to me. So we're going to take a break.
Okay.
And then we are going to come back and continue our conversation.
Sounds good.
We'll see you in just a bit.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
So, welcome back. We're refreshed. So, thank you for allowing us to take a break. So, let's continue on our conversation. As I mentioned, now my kids call you Uncle Jay. You live close by.
Yes.
And it was really, I learned a lot about you as a professional when you were our designer. And as I mentioned, the beginning of the gut renovation of our apartment happened just a couple months before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And then that led into a situation where we lost our contractor, quite literally. I have never heard from him since.
Right.
So he disappeared and left us with an apartment that was about 80% done. And you were instrumental in helping pick up those pieces. So as we get involved in the conversation and talk a little bit more about negotiation, I'd love to hear if you have anything to say about that, because if you don't, I certainly do.
Sure.
So I guess my first question for you, Jay, is what does Minnesota nice mean to you?
Minnesota nice, it's everything that you just said. It's not saying what you mean. It's not saying what you want, and you say it with a smile on your face. And it even goes beyond just saying it, right? It's saying it, knowing full well you don't mean it, and actually following through, right? Like someone will invite you to a party you don't want to go to. You say yes, you don't want to go, but you fake it the entire time. You're miserable till the party starts. You're miserable when you get there. You're miserable through the whole thing. You're not even happy until you leave.
Yeah.
But you follow through with it.
You commit. You commit and you go for it.
You commit.
Yeah. That's so true. And the other kind of side piece of Minnesota nice being in Minnesota is that often the back end of it is that you hear through a third party how the person really felt about your party.
Oh, that's a huge part, because like you don't say it to the person.
Yeah, right.
But there's a huge part of Minnesota nice, which is as soon as you turn your back, the truth comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And you've had I suppose you've had to personally unlearn some Minnesota nice habits to become a better communicator and negotiator. Anything that you coming to New York had to let go of?
Unlearn?
Yeah, unlearn.
About 90% of what I knew about conversation and compromise and negotiation. I mean, I think there's nothing more opposite of what people say is very New York than what is Minnesota nice. Yeah. There couldn't be anything more different.
Right.
And so I had to unlearn that. I had to learn that it was a little bit surprising to have someone actually say what they mean, and not even say it in a mean way, but to just have someone say, "No, I don't want to."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking they don't even care if that hurts my feelings, and it didn't hurt my feelings, but I was just surprised that someone would be that candid.
Yeah.
But there was tons of it I had to unlearn.
It's almost refreshing. Like whatever, if you would consider like what is New York nice.
Yeah.
And obviously there are two sides of every coin. But if you think of like what is New York nice, I mean that idea that you're direct, you say what you want. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a jerk about it. And I think that that's kind of the sometimes the stereotype that New Yorkers are given. But in a certain way, that directness is refreshing coming from Minnesota when it seems like you really never knew what somebody was actually saying to you. Right. You had to, look around, read between the lines, kind of figure it out. Like, are you saying yes? Or are you saying no? Like my mom used to say, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about this in years. My mom used to, so she'd say, honey, do you want us to go to your game? And we'll say, oh mom, you don't have to. I know you've got a lot that's going on. So you don't want me to go to your game? No, mom, if you want to come to the game, you should really come to the game. Okay, so I should go to the game. Mom, I'm telling you, you can go, you can say, I want you to do what you want to do. Oh, honey, I feel like you don't want me to go to the game. It's like that.
That's 100% what it is.
That's the conversation.
Talking around and around and around and around.
Exactly.
100%.
Oh my gosh. All right, so let's pivot to conflict avoidance and passive aggressive negotiation tactics. I mean, your world of interior design, dealing with owners of, I am sure, varying degrees and varying different negotiation styles and personality traits. Contractors, again, of varying styles, manufacturers, retailers. I'm how does that play out? That passive aggressiveness play out across the table if you encounter that?
So the truth is, it doesn't. That doesn't work for me. Like, even if I wanted to be Minnesota nice in this city, in my career, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because I deal with clients of varying degree, and I deal with retailers, vendors, manufacturers. I deal with showrooms, so I deal with a lot of reps. And the Minnesota nice just doesn't work, because if I lie, or if I'm not honest, if I say, yeah, I guess it could be red, that's going to show up red. There's no, people don't always just assume that I might be saying something just to appease them. So like Minnesota nice doesn't work in those situations. And the biggest thing I've learned is that there is with everyone I deal with, there's an adaptability there, right? So even if something works with a contractor, those same tactics don't work with the client, nor should they work with the client, nor in instances where I'm the retailer. I deal with wholesalers and I become the retailer. All of those relationships are very different. And so the problem with the passive aggressiveness, that does not work across the boards. So much of what I do is based on relationship.
Yeah.
Not even so much reputation, but it's based on the relationships that you have. And if you have a passive aggressive relationship, nobody wants to work with you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because from my standpoint as a real estate professional, it's very similar. I think that that idea that you're dealing with multiple parties, it's like a multilateral negotiation, and you've got to make sure that several different parties are satisfied. And if you're going to say one thing to one person that just isn't true or doesn't necessarily meet your needs or satisfy you, that's going to cascade, and it's going to have negative effects on all of the other parties that are involved in that negotiation. And I see that too in our negotiation. So that's a really interesting point. So how do you recognize when someone is being nice but they're not actually aligned in agreement? Are there tells for seeing people who are being Minnesota nice?
There are. A lot of it comes from people's reactions. A lot of times I'll be with a client and I'll be asking questions, and then a question will come up and I'll say, "What do you think about this?" And that client will say, "I think it's okay." And I'll say, "That's not true." I can tell just based on the conversation we had before. I can tell by your reaction. I can tell by your facial expression. I can tell that you don't like this. And so there's always little tells, something like that. If body language, facial expressions, but also in what I do, I have long-standing relationships with a lot of my vendors, so I know them. So I can tell if something is a little bit different, which is another reason, like with my clients, I try to get to know them very well, so that I know I can tell if maybe they might be fibbing or they might be saying something so as not to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
The answer to that for me is just having such an honest, open dialogue with them from the very beginning, which is not something that Minnesotans do. But from the very beginning, having an open dialogue and saying, "I'm not emotionally attached to what I'm doing. You cannot hurt my feelings. If you don't like it, say you don't like it." And I say that from the very beginning. Or if you love something, don't be embarrassed to tell me. Just from the very beginning, I let them know, you will not hurt my feelings. And that's probably the Minnesota in me, letting them know right away, you're not going to hurt my feelings. That's maybe what Minnesota nice has done to me.
So I absolutely love what you just said, because so one of the things that of all the preparation that I do and all the thinking that I do through negotiation, and specifically for this topic, as you were talking, one of the things that never occurred to me as like a superpower for someone who understands Minnesota nice is that idea that you can identify it when it's happening and give someone permission to not act passive aggressively or to not avoid conflict, which is amazing. And this is why I love negotiation, because it is such a skill. So that, as we talk about one of the things that Minnesota Nice can give you, it's almost like it gives you the antidote, or it gives you almost like the knowledge of or the indicators that you can see it in someone and then say, hey, it's okay.
Yeah,
that's all right. You don't have to tell me what I want to hear.
You have the foresight that it could come. Like if I ask a question and I know there might be a Minnesota Nice answer, I say, don't worry. You won't hurt my feelings. There's no appeasing anyone here.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, from when we talk about strategic empathy in negotiation, that one of the questions that I have for you is there a version of Minnesota Nice that actually helps in negotiation? And you just answered that.
Yeah.
It's that strategic empathy. It's being able to really hear that other person, empathize with them, and give them a path to make it to the next level of that deal, which is really amazing. And now I'm going to add that to all of my negotiation classes. So thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
So how do you coach, as you've worked with other designers, you've had design assistants, you've worked with different firms. Mm-hmm. How do you coach those affected with Minnesota Nice to be the best kind of Minnesota Nice, the kind, warm, rapport building Minnesota Nice?
So that's a good question. And when I'm in New York, everyone says, "Oh my gosh, you're so nice." And when I'm in Minnesota, people think, "Oh my gosh, you're so New York." So I must be somehow finding this balance. The way that I, if I'm on a team or I'm teaching someone, I show them by example. I will have someone by my side where I am having a dialogue with a vendor or a contractor, and they actually they observe the way that I talk. They observe the things that I say. I don't want to. There have been times where I'll have a meeting and I'll walk out of that meeting with my assistant and I'll turn to them and say, "That was a lie."
Yeah.
And they say, "How do you know?" And I'm like, I know. Let's look at where the conversation started. Look at where it ended. We're going to get an email in less than 12 hours that states the contrary.
Yeah.
Because you just know. But I teach them by example. I teach people that you can be assertive without being pushy. And you can compromise without being a pushover. There's a fine line. And a lot of that has to do with just keeping the open, honest conversation happening and maintaining that dialogue with people. And like I said, the dialogue I have with you is very different than a dialogue that I might have with a vendor, which might be different than a dialogue I have with another vendor. It's about knowing that person and understanding where they're coming from, and they understand where I'm coming from. And you just keep that open dialogue going. And usually, and the thing I always tell people I work with is, I want you to be able to do my job so I don't have to work anymore. So and that actually
the dream?
And that actually helps a lot, because I don't I would never tell someone who works with me what to do. I'm like, just do what I do, and then eventually you can do it all, and I don't have to do it anymore.
Well, and from a mentor perspective and a coach perspective or a boss perspective, that's also really refreshing. And I think there is some of that, the good parts of Minnesota Nice in there, that politeness or that empathy, those things that we were talking about. Because as you're talking about this idea of telling people that you mentor, I want you to be able to do my job. I don't think that's always the way it goes with a supervisor or a someone in an advisory role and someone in a subservient role, or a boss and an employee. It's almost like I'm afraid that you're going to take my job. Yeah. I get defensive if and I think there's some of that happens in New York City a lot, that competitive atmosphere where it's I'm going to teach you enough of what I do to keep you in the job, but not enough where I have to look over my shoulder.
Right.
And that idea that somehow it's like, no, my goal, and I feel the same way with the people on my team. My goal is to get you to a point where you know everything that I know, 100%. That you can work with every client that I work with, that you can do the job, and I can, go sit on a beach.
Always.
Or on the, what is it? The Red River. What's the river what's your near? Oh God.
Geography?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I was expecting that you were going to know the river between North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. You know that river? Where is Red River? It flows north. It's a river that flows north.
There is a Red River.
Oh geez. Okay. So, oh geez, there's a Red River in Minnesota.
Oh God, that's
everybody.
embarrassing.
Yeah. Oh God. All right. So
can you cut that part out?
yeah. Is there an editing process? All right. So, I did want to mention, because I talked about before we do, this is a perfect place to take a break.
Okay.
And let our sponsors do their thing, so that we can come back and I can talk about my apartment renovation, because that's what I want to talk about.
Great.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. We work with Brown Harris Stevens and many other top real estate firms, staging their homes to sell quickly and at the highest price possible. Our staging is affordable without sacrificing quality or design. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, we are back. I said, all right. See, all I have to do is sit down with you
so easily
for 30 minutes.
It's
and
dangerous.
Like, okay. Well, we're back. And where I wanted to pick this up is, as I mentioned before, you were our designer, did an amazing job. We had a complete gut renovation. Mm-hmm. And I'll mention a couple things that I loved about what you did, and then I have a story that I want to share with our audience. One of the things that I loved that you did with Andrea, with my wife and I, is, I should say me, right? My wife and me. I don't know. I'm from Minnesota. So one of the things that I loved that you did is when we had a budget like anybody else, and you were able to, you absolutely listened to the fact that we were on a budget, and we wanted to make sure that we spent the money that we needed to spend in the right places. And the way that you listened and guided us through, and I'm all about creating value in any negotiation, right? It's that idea of 1 + 1 = 3, and how people value things differently. And oftentimes the people that we're speaking to who are selling us something or who are providing us a service, and this happens with real estate agents constantly, is that the perception is that you're acting in your own self-interest, right? You are telling someone what to do because it satisfies your interest, not theirs. And the thing that you did throughout the entire process was that you walked us through every item that was going to cost money, including fixtures, faucet fixtures and light fixtures and flooring and molding, everything that was going to cost us money. And it was a conversation about, where do you want to spend money? And then advice from you on where you thought we should spend money. And left to my own devices, and the reason I think about this all the time is when we're negotiating with clients in the real estate realm, we are doing the same thing. We have to be able to advise them on what they're spending and why it makes sense. And when you would say to us, don't go and buy a Home Depot faucet fixture. If you're going to spend money, that's where you want to spend it. A nice fixture that's going to last, that's going to be heavy, that's going to just shine, and that people are going to walk into your bathroom and they're going to know that that's a beautiful fixture. And that's going to give a perception of that everything else that you did was done with that level of sophistication and quality. Yeah. And I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Well, I will say that a lot of that comes from listening. I will say this. One thing that Minnesota Nice has done for me is it's made me a better No, it has not made me a better listener. It has enabled me to become a better listener because like you mentioned, like someone says something, and if you're Minnesota Nice, you immediately think one thing and say something else. And so one of the things I've done is I try to stop myself from doing that, but you still have to take that little second. And taking that little second has enabled me to be able to listen to people better. So even if someone says to me, I don't like this faucet, or I don't want to spend X amount of dollars on a faucet, I say, okay, tell me why. Let's talk about this. And one of the advantages to working with you and Andrea was that I did already know you both, and I knew you both very well. Right. And there were moments where I just knew there would be certain things that were important. And this is silly. A lot of designers out there might agree with me, but your bathroom faucet is something that you touch, or you should touch every day, right?
Okay,
and so,
confirmed.
And so,
I touch it every day.
And so if you don't like the way that feels in your hand, or if that does not feel of a quality that you appreciate, you're going to think about that every time you touch it. And I knew, even when we had conversations about budgets with you and Andrea, I said, let's go touch some faucets. Yeah. Let's go touch some faucets. Yeah, and we did. And it's a lot of them. And because I knew that deep down that would be something that mattered. But there are other things where people might want to spend a lot of money on something, and it does matter to them, but it would never matter to you. Right? So it all depends. But that all comes down to listening. And I will say that brief second where I still have to stop myself from saying my first thought, you know, that Minnesota nice. And not that the first thought is bad, but saying that first thought, which is, sure, yeah, whatever you say. You know, that split second where I pause, I ask a question usually. Get to know somebody, let them talk to me. Because if I listen to you say what's important, then I get to respond. So I get to either agree or disagree or plead my case, so to speak.
It's such great advice. And when we go back to, my leading into this, our conversation, and we talk about what is happening, I always like to bring it down to what is physically happening, what is psychologically happening to us when we have those moments. And you're right. It is when we perceive that we're being disrespected or somebody's being rude to us or there's a conflict, it is our primal brain goes like that, works in an instant, and it triggers us. And without that pause, without taking that step, I mean, in a millisecond, our brain is ready to respond. And we get hot, we get warm, we start to feel like we want to really respond with anger or rage. And, as I'll say at the end of this podcast, as we summarize, if you do take that moment and you don't just say the first thing on your mind, or you don't push down that thought, you don't avoid the conflict or the feeling that you're feeling, you just take a moment to breathe through it so that you can actually respond with something that's tactical or strategic that's going to end up working well for you and for the person that you're speaking with.
100%.
Yeah. Well, and there's one other story about our renovation that I do want to share because I think it's a great negotiation story. As I said, it was well, I'm not. I don't know why I'm telling you.
I was there.
As I said, dear listener, it was a mess. It happened during COVID, and our contractor disappeared, and so all of our subcontractors disappeared, and it turned out that a lot of them were not getting paid, and so we had work in one of our bathrooms that was. Well, we actually had to break through the tile to redo the shower bodies, all that stuff.
Yes,
Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And so we needed someone to do the tile, and we also needed backsplash and in our kitchen. And our contractor's gone, not paying his subs, and Jay finds a way to get that subcontractor.
Yeah.
Because you had connected with him, you knew how to get in contact with him. And you were able to connect with him and then convince him or allow him to understand that we were doing everything that we could do to make sure our contractor was getting paid, and work a deal out with him so that he was willing to come back, not only to finish that bathroom, but to do the kitchen as well.
Yeah.
Which, amazing. So
that's actually a really good example of how our Minnesota nice comes in handy sometimes, because when it comes to things like tile, I get very particular. So at the time that I connected with this gentleman, at the time that we bonded, he was probably, I believe, tiling one of the bathrooms where the tile was going to meet the floor tile, and I was being very particular.
Oh, I remember.
And so my Minnesota nice kicks in. Yes, I know. I wanted everything to align, and that's important to someone like me. I have that kind of OCD. That's why I have this job. But and so my Minnesota nice kicked in, because I knew if I wanted him to work with me and to continue to work with me, I had to make it fun. I had to make him laugh a little bit, and I knew that I had to have a personable relationship, and he was great. And so we laughed about it. I said I'd bring him donuts. I never did, but I would
It's
have,
all right, I bought
if I brought everybody donuts that I told I'd bring them donuts. That's my Minnesota nice. I promise everybody donuts.
Wait a minute. What about
And
the
I don't
commitment,
follow
through?
No, that's
you're
no,
supposed to
no.
go to the party that you don't want to go to. Remember?
The Minnesota in me promises donuts. The New Yorker in me never shows up. That's how it works. But it actually turned out to be a great resource. I've used him on other things since then. And so when the contractor disappeared, I reached out to him directly, and I said, I think I know, because he didn't want to tell us what his situation was. He didn't want us to know, per se, that he wasn't getting paid. And I said, I think I know what's going on. And I said, this, I think we're all kind of in the same boat. Let's work something out where you can come back and do this work for us. And he was happy to. And he's a great guy. He was fun to work with. But I built that relationship with him during the project, when everything was going smoothly.
And I love that idea of we're all in the same boat. Yeah. Especially during COVID. We're coming out of COVID. Everybody wants work. Everybody needs to, get these things done, and it's challenging. But that idea that we weren't on two sides of this negotiation. We're all together here. Yeah. Let's work something out, because we're all in the same boat here. We're going to make sure that you get taken care of. This is not going to be the situation that you faced before.
Well, even if it wasn't COVID, I wanted him to know that we were not trying to take advantage of him, and I wanted and he wanted me to know that he was going to be careful. He didn't want to be taken advantage of. But there was no one had anything to lose in this situation. I said, this is how you can come out ahead, and this is how we come out ahead. And so let's both move this forward. There was no losers in this situation. No one wants to feel like they're losing. No one wants to feel like they're getting taken advantage of. And so it was and luckily he was a great guy, and he came back to finish, and it was worth it.
Yeah, did great work. Yeah, it was amazing.
Very good work.
Well, all right. So now we're going to go on to the lightning round. I'm just going to ask you a few speedy questions here. Doesn't have to be one word, because I want some of your insight on some of this, especially the first question, because I know you're going to love it. Okay. So here we go with the lightning round.
Okay. Cue music.
All right. So cookie salad. Salad or dessert?
It's a salad, and I'm offended by the question.
Tell us what cookie salad is, Jay.
Cookie salad is basically pudding and whipped cream mixed together to make sort of a custard with crushed up fudge striped cookies and mandarin oranges. And it's delicious. And it's sort of, there's many variations of this salad. Snickers salad is similar, but it's got a different fruit, and it's got Snickers candy bars in it. Now, the controversy here, and this is my...
This is where you're offended by the question?
This is where I'm offended by the question. Well, what people, when, everyone here says that's not a salad. That doesn't have dressing. It's not green. It's not leafy. But salad versus dessert is not about what it looks like. It's about when you eat it. Dessert comes after a meal. Salads are a little something on your plate. Cookie salad is merely a little something sweet on your plate during the meal. And in Minnesota, that's okay.
I think we just pushed a button. I think we just found.
Are we still on?
We found Jay's button.
I've had this conversation. So now it's such a topic for me that every Thanksgiving, if I go somewhere, I bring cookie salad, whether I'm asked to or not. And the number of times I get asked, "Is this a dessert?" I go, "No." Put it next to the green beans, not next to the pie. No one's going to eat it if it's next to the pie. Everyone's going to take it if it's next to the green beans.
I love it. All right. Well, that was
Sensitive
that
topic.
That answer alone was worth the entire episode.
Yes.
Somewhere.
Thank you.
Okay. What's one negotiation lesson you wish you had learned earlier in life?
One negotiation. Well, so I was raised with the Minnesota Nice negotiation tactic, which is don't make the other person happy. Like don't just make the other person happy.
Complete
and
compliance.
what I learned as an adult, especially as a business owner, if you do that once, if you concede a little bit, it snowballs, and before you know it, it's out of control. I wish I had known that you can speak your mind. And that doesn't mean you're being a mean person. You can speak your mind and still be a good person. You can even say no and laugh.
Yeah.
You know, it can be done. I wish I had known that. I wish I had known that even as a kid, but I mean, it wouldn't have mattered. I grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah,
so
everybody was
lying
complying
anyway.
with each other. So it was like, no, you go.
Right.
No, you go.
Right. Yeah.
No, seriously, you go. No, you're.
Yeah.
So everybody's just walking around complying with each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Pretty
it
much.
doesn't really matter until you get somewhere where somebody actually says no to you, and you're like, what?
Yeah, it's alarming.
All right, I love that answer. Okay, so St. Paul or Minneapolis?
They're both great. I will say, I'm going to say Minneapolis only because I've spent more time there, and I did live there for a brief period, but I think I would go back to either city.
Yeah.
Either one.
They're very different. Of the Twin Cities, they have their own vibe. There's no question about it. All right. And since we have to go all the way to New Jersey to find anything close to the Mall of America,
Oh, wow.
what is your favorite thing to do in New York City other than going to malls?
Are you implying that? Are you implying that the Mall of America was my favorite place to go?
Was it?
No. Well, I mean, when it first opened, you remember when it first opened? Yeah, you had to go.
Yeah, you go up to the
and
club, you go line dancing, you go to Fat Tuesdays.
Yeah, there was 3 of everything in that mall. Right. I remember the first time I went.
Yeah, which Caribou were we?
No, we walked out and I said, okay, remember we parked by the Gap. So like the entrance to the parking ramp was by the Gap. I didn't know there was 3 gaps in there at the time.
That's right.
It didn't matter. We were lost in there all day anyway. But to answer your question, I'm going to say probably like museums and galleries in New York. The museums are, you can hit up anytime. Galleries are great. I mean, all over Chelsea, all over the Lower East Side, and they're constantly changing shows. They're constantly moving things around. So I think that is, that would be my go-to equivalent, not of going to the mall, but maybe of spending a day doing something.
Yeah, okay.
A daytime activity.
All right, you can act like you don't like the mall. That's fine.
Wow.
All right. Do you have one final piece of, this was amazing, Jay. Thank you. This is a fun conversation. I really, really appreciate you being my first guest.
Thank you.
I still have
Thanks for having me.
that surprise to share that is not giving you one of my children. You've asked and I've said no. So what do you have one final piece of wisdom you want to share with our audience today?
I don't know if I have a piece of wisdom, but I would just reiterate, because this is how I wish people would deal with me. You don't have to be pushy to be assertive, and you don't have to be a pushover to compromise. The word negotiate sounds like you have to win, and compromise sounds like you lose. And somewhere in the middle, where there isn't a word, is where we all need to live. And I guess my only, my tidbit of advice would be to just try it. Try it. Yeah. Can we try it? That's what I say. That's actually what I say when I'm negotiating with, say, a client or a vendor, and they say, oh, we've never done it that way, or we've never seen it like that. I say, well, can we try it?
Yeah.
Can we try it? So just try it. None of us want to be bad people.
Yeah, well,
maybe
for the most part, I think that's true.
Neither of us want to be bad people.
I don't want to be bad people. But I love that idea of somewhere in the middle. There's this thing that we want that there's no word for.
No word.
And frankly, the reason I'm doing this podcast and the reason I dedicate so much of my passion, time, and energy to negotiation, to collaborative negotiation, is that idea that negotiation is looked at as this negative thing, and we're looking for this word that we don't have a word for. The word is negotiation. We need to take that word and put it where it needs to be, and that's the word that we want to use. But it does have such it feels like this win-lose game, this fixed pie mentality, and that somehow if you're negotiating, it's this slimy, manipulative kind of thing, and that's not true. And what you're talking about, that in the middle where exists this thing that we don't have a word for, that's collaborative negotiation. So I love the fact that you brought that in. Where can people find you? Where can they see your work? Obviously, they're going to all go out and get Lux Magazine and see your cover.
You should go out and get Lux Magazine, but mine is not currently on the stands any longer.
Oh, well, they're going to have to.
So, but you should still go get it. You can find me on Instagram, JayJBilliet_interiors, and that's JayJBilliet_interiors, or my website is jjbilliet.com.
Jay, your first name is Jay.
Yeah.
Jay, an initial J.
Jay, yes.
And then Billiet.
Yeah, Jay, Jay, my first name, Jay, my middle initial, Billiet.
Got it.
My last name.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I'm going to wrap up.
Okay.
I have my special announcement, so don't leave. Don't go anywhere. Don't go to the mall. Don't go to the mall and start throwing cookie salad around. Okay, before I do my final takeaways, let's take one more break.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
All right, we're back. During the break, we got Ray's recipe for ambrosia, which we're going to put in the notes of the podcast. But again, thank you, Jay. I want to give some final details or final thoughts on what we discussed today. And as I said, Jay spoke to many of these really, really eloquently. So I appreciate that. But remember, when we experience conflict or mistreatment, dismissal or rudeness, our brain interprets that as a threat. So don't bury or mask your frustration. Don't be Minnesota nice. Don't be a jerk, but be thoughtful with your response. As Jay said, take a moment, breathe, and then be appropriately assertive in order to get the best possible outcome. Don't confuse kindness with collaboration. This is a costly mistake. Collaboration requires honesty, sometimes tension, and sometimes some friction. Being kind at all costs leads to under-communicating and over-accommodating, as we talked about, and making agreements that you really don't want to make. And then the art of act powerfully, strategically, and with clarity. When you prioritize being liked or avoid conflict over being clear, you give up power. Nice becomes a liability when you mask your goals, mute your voice, or cause you to yield just to keep the peace. And then the last one piece of advice for those who fall into the conflict avoidance, compliant, passive-aggressive ditch. Practice saying no without apology. And Jay talked to this as well. Practice saying no without apology. Ask directly for what you want. And remember, you're not being rude. You're being clear. Your goal as a negotiator isn't to win people's affection. It's to earn their respect. So again, Jay, what I want to the special announcement that I want to make is that you're going to be coming back. About every few podcasts, Jay will join me, and we'll either have a guest together. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
look, we've already got 2 fans. So,
yeah.
So
I'll bring cookie salad next time.
Exactly. Jay's going to bring cookie salad. Ray will bring his ambrosia. It's going to be fantastic. But I'm looking forward to having you back. I think our audience is going to love having you back and seeing and hearing your insights. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
In terms of what you can do next for this podcast, we're going to be around. We're going to be every 2 weeks. We're going to be here to talk about different facets of negotiation, and have a fun, honest conversation about collaborative negotiation and some facet or some small strategy or tactic around negotiation. So go to getmorenetwork.com, and you can subscribe and like wherever you listen to podcasts. Obviously, if you're watching us, we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you get your podcasts, we will be there. But we want you to join us, like and subscribe, and come back. If you want to find me, I'm at Eirik the Expert. And just like Jay had to go through the complicated, spelling of his name, my name is also complicated. Thanks, Mom and Dad. It is E-I-R-I-K. I say Eirik with 2 I's, E-I-R-I-K. So you go to Eirik the Expert, and you can find me anywhere on socials there. You can find my team, the Excelsior team at Brown Harris Stevens, by going to bhsusa.com. And you can check out my website, my coaching website, archwaypartners.com, at archwaypartnersinc.com. And you can take a look at all of the freebies and classes and things that we offer as a part of my coaching program. So thank you once again. I appreciate you being here. I look forward to the next time. And remember, there's a key for every lock, but it's the right combination of grooves, cuts, and teeth that lifts the pins and creates what we call the shear line. So until next time, keep turning curiosity into connection, mystery into mastery, and keep unlocking what's possible. Thank you very much, everybody.